Who is the man in these photos? Is he crazy, adventurous, a thrill seeker, or just your average guy? The man in these photos is Ron Sarchian, who among other things is a cancer survivor, 34-time Guinness World Record holder, fitness professional, author, road cyclist, mountain biker, stuntman, actor, comic, and MC. Let's find out more about Ron in this exclusive interview.
Just kind of take us back to, what inspired you to go after these records? And at what point, if you can get kind of close to the year roughly when this happened? Because when I met you, you were working at Boeing and we were doing a radio show. And the next thing I knew, I'm seeing photos of you like, breaking records for how many eggs can you eat at a single buffet or so. I mean, you're smashing watermelons and then you're doing all kind of crazy things. I said, what happened to this guy? When did this start?
Well, I actually started breaking records in 2004. That was my very first attempt. And it was the heavy bag attempt. I punched a heavy bag for 36 hours and I don't know, 36 hours and 3 minutes or something like that. And that was my first attempt. And I was teaching boxing and kickboxing at a couple gyms in Southern California. And I felt very comfortable. I thought, I can do that, because the record at the time was 24 hours. And I thought, God, 24 hours, I can do anything for 24 hours. And this was back when I actually turned 40 during that first attempt. It was my 40th birthday weekend, because I punched the bag for 36 hours. So I was punching the bag from this. That's right. This was my first attempt. So I actually did it on the actual days of my birthday. So it was like a Tuesday, Wednesday sort of thing. And then I learned that you can't do record attempts on Tuesday and Wednesday. Nobody cares. Nobody's going to come out. The media doesn't care. You got to do them on the weekends when people can come out and watch. And if you do a fundraiser, they can donate and the media can come out, cover it. It's a lot harder during the week to do something like that. So I learned from that first attempt, and all the rest of my attempts have either been on Saturday or Sunday since then. But so that's when I got started. It was that June 15th and 16th of 2004 when I turned 40. And I was successful. And then I did 3 more years after that, 4 in a row. And I just did 1 record attempt on my birthday each year. And so those first 4 years I was successful. And then I got into a bike accident, had to have surgery. And for whatever reason, I ended up taking 5 years off. And honestly, I wasn't even thinking about Guinness World Records. I was just moving on with my life. And then I decided, I found out that the original record that I broke, the heavy bag record, got broken at 48 hours. And back then I used to take it personally when somebody would break one of my records. So I said, I got to re-break that record. And I did 50 hours. And that was on my 48th birthday weekend. And that was 2012 when I did that. And then I just started breaking records on a regular basis. And then I took a few breaks here and there because of surgeries and accidents and, stuff like that from doing stunt work. And
Okay. Well, just wait a second now. Because you've in listening to this, you've given me like 5 or 6 questions now I got to ask.
Yes.
So first question is, what initially attracted you to this? I mean, this isn't, a lot of people are attracted to a lot of things, but,
Right.
not necessarily breaking records. So what was it about breaking records initially that was appealing to you?
Well, one of the things and one of the reasons why I started breaking records is because I had always wanted to honor my dad. And my dad died from testicular cancer when he was only 33. I was 3. He was 33 when he passed away. And I thought, well, this would be a really cool reason to raise money for, and at the time I was a big fan of Lance Armstrong's, and I was raising money for the Lance Armstrong Foundation. And I raised almost $10,000 during the world record attempt. So that was another reason. I had always wanted to break a Guinness World Record because when I was a kid, I always played with the paperback book And I used to come home from school and look at that book, and it was the two really big guys on the motorcycles on the cover. And I thought, someday I'm going to be in that book. And it took me 40 years, but it finally got to that point where I found a record that I could break and broke it, and made it into the book. But it was also an opportunity to honor my dad and raise money for the Lance Armstrong Foundation, which led to a lot of other things in my life, because I got invited to go and actually ride my road bike with Lance Armstrong in Austin for their big annual fundraiser. It was called the Ride for the Roses is what it was called. And if you raise a certain amount of money, you got invited to come out and go to dinner and ride with Lance. And so that was pretty cool too. And that led to me riding road bikes, and I've been riding road bikes ever since.
Yeah. Okay. Which leads me to another question, because you just casually mentioned, and then there was the bike accident, and there was another bike accident,
Yeah.
and there was this. But let me backtrack for a second. About the 48 hours, I mean, or 20, I guess it was first
36.
36, and it was 48.
Yeah.
So how do you stay awake? I mean, that's a long time to just be doing one thing. I mean, most people after about 8 or 9 hours, it's time to go to bed.
You know what? Honestly, it never became an issue. I think you have so much adrenaline going, and there's people there, and there's energy in the room. And it's something that I was really looking for. It took me a year to train for it. So sleeping has never really become an issue. Even when I did 50 hours, the adrenaline keeps you going.
Mhm.
And the idea that, oh, you're only 12 hours or 8 hours or 4 hours away from breaking another world record keeps you going. And so, yeah, that's never actually been an issue. Like, I've never thought, oh God, I got to lay down, It usually becomes an issue about pain, either in a knee or in your back or in your, when I did 50 hours, I could feel my body starting to shut down. I could feel all the different systems were starting to get to the point where they weren't going to work anymore if I kept going, and I didn't want to end up in the hospital. So after I beat it, the record was 48 hours and I got 50. When I got to 50, I was like, okay, I'm going to stop at 50, because I really don't want to end up in an ambulance or end up at the hospital.
But were you hungry? And I mean,
No,
so you had to go to the bathroom.
With Guinness World Records, if you go beyond 24 hours, it's considered an endurance record. And they actually want you to stop every hour. So it's like, you have to think of it. This is usually how I explain it. It's like a 65-minute hour. So for 60 minutes, you're punching, and then you get a 5-minute window to go to the bathroom and to eat your food for the next hour, because you can't eat while you're punching. You can drink, you can have somebody feed you water, but you can't actually eat food. So the way it usually breaks down for me, and then I have a recumbent bike sitting on near the bathroom, so I don't have to walk too far. I'll have my team take my gloves off. I'll go into the bathroom. I'll chug a bottle of water while I'm peeing, just to make sure that I constantly have a flow of water going through me. 2 minutes in the bathroom, and then I'm out on the recumbent bike, so my lower back doesn't freeze up on me. And then while I'm pedaling and riding the bike is when I'm eating and swallowing the food for getting my calories for the next hour. So it's not really a break. It's
Okay.
I'm actually working harder during that 5 minutes, because I'm rushing everywhere I go, and I'm hurrying to chew and swallow my food, because I only have roughly about 2 to 2.5 minutes to eat my food and swallow some food and get those 2 or 3 or 400 calories for the next hour. Then my gloves go back on. I get to get up, maybe a quick stretch while I'm standing in place, and I'm back on the bag. So not much of a break. I mean, it's not like people think, oh, you get to lay down for 5 minutes. No, you don't get to lay down at all. So a lot of it is just, now that I've done it several times, I know exactly what to expect and what I need, what works for my body to keep me going. So I have a table of food and a table of drinks, And when I'm on the recumbent bike, I can reach over and get whatever I need, eat whatever I need, swallow whatever I need. And it goes by really fast. And hopefully I get enough calories in my body for the next hour, because I tend to burn, I have to punch every 2 seconds. So in an hour, that's roughly 3,600 punches. And I usually throw more like 4,000 to 4,500, because when you first get back on the bag, you're going fast again. And then when you start getting towards the end of the hour, you speed up because you start getting excited again. So I usually throw on the average of about 4,000 punches an hour. So times this next one I'm going to do when I turn 60, I'm going to punch for 60 hours. So I'll be throwing roughly 240 to 250,000 punches during that time.
All right. Well, thanks for that. I understand a lot better what was going on for 48 hours, 36 hours.
Yes.
Now, you mentioned some of these mishaps or accidents. Now, you've had how many bike accidents? Because I know of one, but it sounds like there's more than one.
Oh, there's been a few.
So now how do you, is this like you get hit by a drunk driver, or are you just like going too fast? How do you wind up getting in these accidents?
Well, the first one, I was in what's called a pace line. If you've ever watched like the Tour de France and you've watched the Peloton, especially in a breakaway, they'll get in a pace line, which means they're in a single file line and they're very close to each other. Like the rear tire of the front brake is really close to the front tire of the guy who's behind him, usually sometimes 6 to 10 inches away. And so these guys that I ride with on Sunday, they're all skilled riders. So we can get pretty close and still stay pretty safe. But we were out riding one day with my buddy Skip and a couple of the other guys in the group, and Skip lost control of the bike. It was kind of a windy, rainy day, and we were up on Topanga Canyon coming down into Malibu. Skip lost control and went down and slid. There's 2 ways to crash on a road bike. You can slide or you can bounce. And so Skip went down and slid, and I ran his head over, unfortunately, and went over the handlebars and bounced off the rock face on the side of the road, and fractured my shoulder in about 4 places. And Skip was okay. He had a lot of road rash, but I'm the one that ended up going to the hospital. But I've had a few incidents where I've ended up on the pavement and banged up quite a bit. Had one back in 2018. It was pretty bad.
Yeah, that's the one that I think I'm familiar with.
The forks broke, and I went head first into the concrete and I broke 7 bones on that one. I broke my collarbone. I broke 4 rear ribs, compression fracture in my back, and a severely sprained neck. Took me about 3 months to kind of recover from that one. And I was right back on the bike.
So right back on the bike, breaking other. Yeah. Just quickly mention a couple of other records that you've that you've broken, because I remember you on Today Show, I believe it was, smashing watermelons. That was particularly entertaining.
The Today Show was interesting because I got the Today Show from breaking watermelons at the San Fernando Valley, or the California Watermelon Festival, which is in the San Fernando Valley. And I talked to the director of that festival and I said, listen, I'd love to come be a part of your entertainment schedule at the festival, as long as you supply me with watermelons for my attempts, because I needed 200 watermelons, watermelons aren't cheap. Probably $1,000 worth of watermelons if you bought them, retail. And so he said, I'd love to have you on the schedule. I'll supply you with as many watermelons as I can. And one of the records that I tried to break was the karate chopping record. And I actually got the same amount of watermelons at the festival that I did on the Today Show, except Guinness disqualified me because they said I didn't keep my fingers straight during the karate chop. And they were right, but they didn't specify that in the guidelines. So anyway, when that happened, I got very upset. I wrote a few letters to Guinness and said, hey, this is not okay with me. Put a lot of time and effort into this. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, I got an invite to be on the Today Show to do the karate chopping watermelon record again, but in front of 6 million TV viewers on the Today Show. And I accepted, and I was fortunate that I was successful, and I broke the record with 42 watermelons chopped with my bare hands. So that was an interesting trip.
That does sound interesting. And so, do you like watermelon personally, or did you never want to see another watermelon again after
No,
that?
I love watermelons.
Okay.
We ate most of them afterwards. The whole cast was eating them. Hoda was eating watermelon. Everybody was eating watermelon. That was back when Matt Lauer was still on the show too. Matt was eating watermelon. So, and it was a lot of fun. Everybody was really nice to me, and I don't think that the record was what they were expecting, because it is kind of a violent record. It's very loud and very intense.
Messy, very messy too.
Yes. But I was successful, and it was a fun trip. I think that actually I've only been to New York one other time. That was my interesting trip to New York. That was 2017, I think it was. So that was a while ago. But yeah, so since then, I've continued to break records. And as I told you, we've talked about this, I was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, actually almost a year ago to the day, January 27th of last year. What's today, the 25th, I think?
The
So
day's the 25th. And yeah. Tell me about that in terms of just maybe lead up to it. Were you having some symptoms and feeling like not yourself and that kind of thing?
In 2021, early 2021, I was not feeling that great. I just knew something was off. I started having diarrhea, upset stomach, all that sort of stuff. And my doctor couldn't figure it out. None of the doctors could figure it out. And then in late 2021, I ended up in the hospital going jaundice, and turned completely yellow. My eyes turned yellow. Your skin turns yellow. It's really scary. And they realized that I had a blockage in my bile duct, because my what's called bilirubin, which is a waste fluid that we secrete, we get rid of, was blocked and was going back into my body, and that's what causes jaundice. And so I went in. They basically fixed the blockage temporarily, but they weren't able to figure out what it was, or why it was happening. So then they sent me over to USC Keck Medical Center, and they actually made the diagnosis over there. They did what's called an endoscopic ultrasound, where they go down through your throat and can take a needle biopsy from, whatever part of the body they need to take, a sample from, and then they can test it right away and tell you. Sure enough, I went in, and they came back and said that I had pancreatic cancer, and it was quite a shock. But now it made sense. I realized that there was a serious problem. It wasn't just IBS or an issue with my stomach. It was cancer. And so when you get diagnosed with cancer, it's really shocking, and it takes a little while to, get through the diagnosis and come out the other side and realize, okay, now we got to fight this. Now we got to figure this out. And I got started right away on, within, I think, 2 to 3 weeks, I started on chemotherapy. I had a great surgeon, a great oncologist, and we started attacking it right away. It was about the size of a small grape, right on the head of my pancreas. It wasn't in my pancreas. It was actually on the outside of my pancreas. So the chemo worked really well at reducing the size of the tumor, and also bringing my blood labs. You have a blood marker called CA19-9 for pancreatic cancer, and mine was way up there, and it's supposed to be normal is 35, and I think I was up around 1,000. So this had been raging through my body for a while. So the chemotherapy I was on for, I think I did 6 rounds of chemo. And then I had to go home and take care of my mom. for about a month. I had to actually put my mom in a memory care unit. Last year was a rough year. And then I had to come back home and get back on chemo. And then I had what's called a Whipple procedure, which was a 12-hour surgery where they go in, they cut you open from basically from your belly button up to your sternum, and they go in and they take out the tumor. They took out most of my pancreas, and they basically rearrange your insides. Tough surgery. I was in ICU for 4 days, and I wasn't sure how I was going to make it the first day or two. That was a painful one. I've had a lot of surgeries, but that was next level. I was in the hospital for 9 days, and since they had rearranged all my plumbing, I couldn't eat or drink the whole time I was in there. So they fed me intravenously, and I lost almost, I think, 25 to 30 pounds while I was in the hospital, because I couldn't eat or drink anything. I couldn't even have ice chunks. So I was able to get up the last couple of days, walk around a little bit, you know, and I went from breaking world records to laying in a hospital bed and not being able to eat or drink. It was pretty shocking to my body. And I ended up losing about 45 pounds altogether. And then I got back out of the hospital and ended up having to do 3 more rounds of chemotherapy, and went home to see mom again at the end of the year, and started feeling good again, started feeling strong again. And as a matter of fact, just this past weekend, on January 21st, I broke 4 out of 4 Guinness World Records. I made 4 attempts. So I'm starting to feel good again. We have to constantly monitor what's going on with me. But it's been a rough road. I've been fortunate because I was strong. You know, I take care of myself. I eat right and I exercise. I'm a personal trainer, and a stunt man, as you know. And so I think that helped a lot as far as being strong and getting through it. But I'm fortunate to still be here and breaking more Guinness World Records and living my life again.
Well, that was one of my questions was, first of all, when you're such a physical person and you're active person and you're laying there in the hospital bed, did you have to deal with any kind of depression or anxiety or, very dark thoughts or any of that? Or did you stay positive the whole time?
I try, well, you know me. I mean, I try to stay positive. I don't really go to the dark side very often. But when you're laying in a hospital bed for 9 days and you're not able to eat or drink, it forces you to kind of deal with your own mortality. And if you really still want to be around, I was literally fighting for my life, and I still am. And you drift to the dark side a little bit every once in a while, but for me, I get more frustrated than I get angry. And I get frustrated with having to lay in bed all day and not being able to exercise or move. But I had 45 staples holding me together, so getting in and out of bed was tough because I was always worried I was going to pop some staples. So that, for me, that was the worst part, was having to lay in bed. I really wasn't worried about, because they got the tumor out and they got the cancer out. Everything came out. The surgery was great. My surgeon, Dr. Natalie Sizer, did an amazing job. So for me, the hard part was laying in bed and not being active, not being able to move. But within a couple of days, I think I was in ICU for 4 days, and then I was in the regular oncology unit for 5 more days. I was able to get up and walk, and they actually had a personal trainer come into my room every morning, and I was walking, and I was driving the nurses crazy because I kept wanting to walk and go up the stairs and go outside, and they were like, "You can't go outside, Ron." So I would just walk the unit like all day long. And, I tried to make the best out of it. I made a lot of good friends, great nurses, great staff over there. And the best part was when I was able to start eating again. That was pretty amazing, man. I tell you what, you go off. I've never had to not eat for 9 days before, and that's a long time. And it's just because you get hungry, you want to eat, and I just couldn't do that, and because I didn't want to mess up what was going on, from the surgery. So if you get a chance, and I think you may have already done this, if you go Google the Whipple procedure, it's a pretty interesting surgery. And
Well,
it lasts 12
you
hours.
showed me some photos that
Yeah.
I lost my appetite for a few days after seeing those. I mean, I said, thanks a lot, Ron. You could have just told me about it. You didn't have to send me the photos.
Well,
But
I made the mistake of doing that too.
yeah.
And it scared the hell out of me, and
Ooh.
I should have learned my lesson, because when I had my hip replaced, I came home from the doctor when he said, "Hey, you need a new hip." And I said, "Oh, okay." And I came home, and of course I immediately Googled hip replacement, which I never should have done, because it scared the hell out of me for about 3 days, got nauseous. And then I realized I have to do it. So, you get to a point sometimes where you may not want to do it, but you have to do it. So, and that was the case here too.
You got to do what you got to do. So
You got to do it.
what's your perspective now? I mean, you come through this, and, people that go through this a lot of times will say, now I appreciate the things I didn't appreciate before. I mean,
Yeah.
how's your view of life changed, I guess?
I think for me, my sense of urgency, my intolerance to BS. I don't have time anymore for anything that is negative, or people that are negative. My goal now is to inspire and motivate people, because when I was going through this, I really had no idea whether I was going to make it or not. You read all these. I basically had a 20% survival rate for this without doing the surgery. And so you're constantly thinking about your own mortality, and you have to be strong enough to be able to get through that on a daily basis and just go, you know what, I'm going to make the best of the day. I think what it really does, Kevin, is it really forces you to live in the moment. Because, you never know if tomorrow, and this sounds very cliche, but it's so true in my case, you really don't know if you're going to be here tomorrow. Especially with a surgery like that. I mean, it was almost a 13-hour surgery. And, when the doctor tells you, okay, well, we had to take out most of your pancreas, and then we sewed the remaining part of your pancreas to your stomach, and then we took out your large intestine, we sewed that. And you get to a point where I was so confused about what was sewn to what anymore, that I just felt lucky to still be in the room. And still be able to, at some point I was still going to be able to eat. So, and now I'm eating fine. I'm pretty much back to normal. There's a few little things that are a little different, but you realize that you're going to weigh that out against, okay, we have to do this every day. I have to take a pill or two every day, as opposed to being dead. So yeah, I'll take the pills. If that's what's going to keep me alive, I'll take the pills. I'm happy to. But it really toughens you up a little bit, but it also softens you up a little bit to being a little more sympathetic and a little more empathetic to other people, because, we're all going through something, and you never really know what somebody's going through, because most people don't walk around bragging about it. And I sure don't. But there were some times when I was in the hospital when I would get calls from friends, and you were one of them, and it would make my whole day, a 5-minute conversation, because you're just laying in bed thinking about, oh, man, am I going to live? Am I going to make it to Christmas? Am I going to see my mom again? Am I going to see my friends again? You don't know. Something can go wrong. You can get an infection. You can get a blood clot. There's so many things that can go wrong, and you're gone. So it really does make you appreciate life day to day. And also, like I said, it forces you to be a little more sympathetic and empathetic, but especially to people who are dealing with cancer and going through chemo. And it's horrible. The chemo it's just such a horrible thing to go through. The surgery was rough, but the chemo, because it's so drawn out over time, and it's day after day after day, and you just don't feel good. And I was fortunate. My hair's still here, but there's a lot of side effects that you have to go through, and that's a very difficult journey. It was a very difficult journey. So for me, I'm just very grateful and very lucky to still be here. I had some great doctors behind me, and my journey's not over. Once you have cancer, it's in the back of your mind for the rest of your life. It doesn't just go away. So I'll always be thinking about, I hope it doesn't come back. And but if it does, you got to deal with it and move on. And my motto has always been plan for the worst and hope for the best, so that you're always ready to do whatever you have to do. So, but going back to the world records, that was a big part of what kept me motivated. I think it was 14 Guinness World Records while I was going through chemo. They weren't real physically demanding records, but I still broke 14 of them. So I was very proud of that, because it really did keep me inspired and kept me motivated, kept me going. And that's really what I want to do now for other people, is motivate them and inspire them. And, I have a couple people I'm talking to now who are going through that cancer journey. And, to get advice from somebody who's already been through it and is still living is a big deal for people, encouragement. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to do with this whole experience, is just help other people with it, and then help myself with the world records, because my goal is to break 50 Guinness World Records by the time I turn 60, which is only a year and a half away. So, and hopefully I'll live to be 60.
Oh, you will, because you're such a stubborn guy anyway. It's kind of like I picture the Grim Reaper shows up at your door and he opens you and you said, "No, not today." And you slam the door in his face. That's what that kind of. Well, my final question, and then you can just add whatever you want to that, is that you touched
Sure.
on something about how you want to inspire and support people that are going through it, as well as family members, because there's a certain
Right.
amount of agony. I mean, there's the patient, but then there's the loved ones as well, who might be depressed or don't know what to say or don't know what to do. But you touched on something where you said the records were something that kind of inspired you to keep going. And I guess it made me think that other people that might be having challenges like this, if they can focus on something, whether it's their art, whether it's their kids, or whether it's
a big deal,
a hobby, that's really important.
You have to keep your mind occupied. And with me, it was a lot of, really good friends. I don't have any family out here, but really good friends like yourself, staying in touch, talking. And it's funny because I kind of became the educator for my family and friends, because they would ask me questions. And of course, talking to doctors all day long and Googling stuff, you learn a lot about your specific type of cancer, which was pancreatic cancer for me. So I learned a lot about cancer and treatments and chemotherapy and the radiation and all that stuff. I learned a lot about. So people would ask me, "So what kind of treatments are you going through?" And then I would educate them. So I think it's really important to know as much as you can about what's going on with your body and what's going into your body, like with chemo. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if that really answers the question, but I guess I should be a little more specific. What exactly was your question again?
Well,
as far as
I guess I was just really making more of a statement in that, if you have a person that's maybe they've gotten a diagnosis, and then of course
Right.
there's the family members, so it could be a spouse, it could be your kids, etc. That I think what can help them get through it is if they can focus
Right.
on something that inspires them. So
Yeah.
that's all I
Right.
was saying. I mean, it wasn't so much of a
Well,
question as it was a comment.
a good example is one of my good friends who actually was helping me because she works in healthcare. She works in kind of on the billing end of healthcare. She just got diagnosed 2 weeks ago. So I've been helping her. And like one of the first things I told her is you got to keep your mind occupied, keep working. For me, Kevin, I didn't really change anything I was doing. Like my day to day really didn't change. And I think that's super important. I don't think, even if you don't feel good, you should still get up and do whatever you're going to do. I think as soon as you go down that rabbit hole, especially with chemotherapy, and you start to buy into, oh, I'm not going to feel good for a week or 2 weeks or whatever. I fought that the whole time. Like I would go into chemo with with my laptop and a bag full of books. And I worked the whole time I was in getting chemo in the office for 5 hours. I got a lot done. I actually kind of looked forward to going into the office and getting chemo because I knew I was going to, have 5 hours to do my work. So I always kind of tried to make a positive out of a negative situation. And that was one way to do that. And everybody would look at me like I was crazy, but the day flew by, and everybody else would be sitting in their chair, looking up at the ceiling, just waiting for the chemo. And I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that. It's torture. So yeah, I've been reading books and getting stuff done on the computer and getting ready for my next Guinness World Record and, talking to my relatives. It was a busy day, the chemo is going to do whatever it's going to do. And I don't need to be sitting there thinking about it. Just, there's other things that need to get done. So for me, that's what worked, and what works for me might not work for other people, but keeping yourself occupied and keeping your day-to-day schedule the same and having things to look forward to, just don't stop living because you have cancer. You should be living even more. That's the thing. Doing things that you have always wanted to do, and you get diagnosed, it's time to do those things. It's time to do those things. That's a sign from somewhere that says, hey, a little kick in the butt. That's what cancer is. It's a big kick in the butt. So
yeah, absolutely.
Get out there and do it. Even if you don't feel good, that's okay. Just get out there and do it. So, that's pretty much my story. And like I said, I'm just very grateful and just very thankful to still be here and be able to share the story with you.